Jason Ross, Kyle Madsen, Jay Mars, hanging out with Sam Amick. Sam, how are you?
Great. I was just telling Kyle off air. It's an annual thing. You guys have to deal with the Amick smoky Las Vegas voice and the fatigue that comes with Summer League. But we're here. Let's do this.
Hey, you're a writer. You put the descriptors in there, but I'm going with sexy.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, love you too.
Yeah. I saw you in Vegas. Everybody at that point, a lot of the moves had already been made, and people were kind of waiting on where would Russell Westbrook go. Miami was the talk. Detroit had been mentioned. Then this happened. How surprised were you last night of the Westbrook trade with Chris Paul in that swap there?
Yeah, I mean, not stunned. You know, we wrote a piece, myself and our guy who does a great job covering the Thunder, Brett Dawson, a couple days ago, I think 5 days ago, that Houston had interest and that they were in the mix. Now, at that time, you know, we were told that it was going to be something where Chris would still be part of it. And that was, in fact, discussed. Different scenarios, which that would have been wild, where you would have had, you know, Russ and James and Chris all on the same team. But this is something different. And, you know, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense for both sides. But it's crazy. I think the one thing that I overlooked, you know, in kind of handicapping this was that Chris and Russ basically have the same contract, except that, you know, Russ's was 1 year longer, and that was a big deal for the Thunder. You know, they get off a ton of money, and for Houston, I think it's a good move. You know, I wrote a column about it late last night, and it's like he's 3.5 years younger than James. They needed something else. You know, we know that there was friction between James and Chris, and so, you know, to me, the Rockets are back in the game in the West again.
Yeah, the one overall thought on how I could see Houston's motivation, and this is what you just addressed, Sam, is you get a younger player. It's a different type of player, but I feel like you have two stars that, one, sound like they want to play with each other. One, also both have been great but haven't tasted the best postseason success. A coach in that same realm, a team in that same realm. Where in all of this, then, do you put Houston as a legitimate threat in, one, the West, and two, overall in the league?
I mean, it's hard because they become the latest, you know, on paper team that's good and interesting. But, you know, how many times do we have to get reminded that, you know, what we think it might look like might not be what it actually looks like? So I don't know. You know, you can look at it from the simplistic viewpoint that you're talking about two former MVPs, you know, still in their prime. Now, Russ is, you know, everybody kind of predicts his demise because of the athletic style and the fact that he can't shoot very well, but still two former MVPs who have been MVP very recently. And then you got a coach in Mike D'Antoni who, you know, my understanding is Russ is very excited to play for. I mean, that's the one thing. I thought that Russ wanted to go to Miami. The intel now is that Houston was his number one pick, that he and James Harden, that when Paul George decided to go to the Clippers and to follow Kawhi Leonard, that Russ and James hopped on the phone almost immediately, started talking about this, and that's the way this stuff happens in today's NBA. And so I think that matters a lot. And the Rockets are an extremely player-friendly organization when it comes to, you know, they want their stars to be involved in the wheeling and dealing. So all that spirit, all that talent, I think, puts them back in the game in the West. But, you know, kind of like I wrote, it's like, man, Utah loaded up with Mike Conley and all those other pieces. All the way down the line, Lakers, Clippers, you know, Portland made some moves, and we forget that they were the squad that was in the conference finals. I'm certainly leaving somebody out. I don't know who. But, you know, the West is stacked, and to me, I mean, Houston is right there.
Sam, did this trade and the fact that the Rockets sent out 2 first-round picks and a couple of pick swaps as well, did that confirm kind of the reports of turmoil between Paul and Harden? Because Daryl Morey came out pretty strong against those reports, but this trade seems to indicate they were pretty eager to get rid of Paul.
I'm torn, Kyle, because, you know, and you guys know, like, in this job, like, you can never be naive, right? So it's like, just because the Rockets, you know, push back doesn't mean they're not, you know, it's somewhere in between lying through their teeth and trying to put lipstick on a pig, so to speak. I feel comfortable saying, like the reports of the friction were very real, like 100% real. Reports of a trade demand, I have started to lean towards the fact that maybe Chris didn't make one formally. I think, to be honest, and this is just me, but I could easily see a scenario where Chris intimated that maybe he was ready to go, and the Rockets, sat down with him and were like, okay, bad news, buddy. Your market is terrible, so maybe don't put a trade demand on the table, and maybe walk that back. I don't know. But I will, I guess kind of still lead on the fact that they swear that there were trade scenarios, with this Westbrook deal where they were prepared to keep Chris and to have him be part of this. And it just ended up going this way. I mean, there was 3-team stuff where Chris would have gone to Miami, and Sam Presti, the Thunder GM, in the end, he wanted to execute a 2-team trade. It's now on him to figure out, Chris Paul's next step. And even all the noise about Miami, and I reported some stuff yesterday in terms of Chris is, possibly going to join Jimmy Butler. If I had to handicap that, I don't think that's going to happen. I think Miami's interest is very minimal. So, we'll see what happens there. But to your question, I mean, the friction was real. And I think that is why, again, this is for their locker room, this is like a good reset.
Sam, I want to jump back to the Thunder perspective on this trade. Did you get any sense that when the Paul George stuff was going down, that maybe him and Russ had a conversation? And was there maybe anything on Russ's side where he was trying to convince Paul George to stay, or was it Russ almost urging him to seek out that trade and maybe use that as his get out of OKC free card?
Good question, Jay. I know. I know this much. Russ was not caught off guard by Paul's choice. Some people who believe, and this is the stuff that never really gets reported. It's hard to confirm, but we can all, as adults, agree is probably very plausible. When a guy like Paul George signs a contract like he did last summer, and they were so excited to have him back, there's handshake deals all the time. It's very similar to when Chris Paul went to the Rockets, when he picked up his option and they traded for him. He knew that day that he was getting a max contract the following summer. It was an unofficial agreement. Well, with Paul, there are some people who believe that when he re-signed last summer, I'm talking Paul George, that it was kind of like, hey, let's give this a go. But if we start butting our heads up against the ceiling real quick, and if there's something that could get me back home, because everybody knows that he wanted to play at home, that, would you guys help me facilitate that? And, and so if that's the case, maybe that had something to do with the way this whole thing went down. But all in all, it's, these are all moving parts that certainly are tied to one another, and I don't think Russ was caught off guard, and it seems like Russ is pretty excited to go to Houston.
You were talking, Sam, moments ago about not so sure where Chris Paul would end up. I mean, he's not going to be on OKC on opening day, is he?
I definitely don't think so. I was caught off guard by the sequence of events yesterday. So from the Thunder perspective, it's all right, they are going to talk to his agent, Leon Rose, about the next steps very soon, and definitely open to moving him. But I felt like the Rockets, my understanding is that they believed that Sam Presti already had a new landing spot for Chris Paul. I'm just wondering if that's in fact the case. Like I said, the Miami thing, the second that I had reported about Miami being a real possibility, and the idea that Leon, the agent, would need to kind of make this thing happen. I had some people who were very important in the situation hit me and say, slow that down a little bit. So, with that in mind, I don't know where Chris goes. They being the Thunder, they swear that they're fine with, if he's there during the season to play. The reality is, and this is harsh from a human standpoint, is this is a move they had to make. So if he's not happy to be there, and he's there's kind of thing they're gonna shrug. It is what it is. This season for them doesn't really matter. They're in a rebuild now,
yeah.
And even if they win games, which they're not totally averse to. Their picks are down the road a little bit. It's not, I forget exactly what they're looking at, in 2020 in the draft. But, this is a very, very long runway for them. And now it's just a matter of like staring at the clock and hoping that, it goes a little bit faster.
Sam Amick from The Athletic joining us here on The Drive. So we were just saying this, Sam, before you came on. This is great for talk shows, probably great for you as far as content on a regular basis, to see the amount of stars, superstars that have changed teams. I can't figure out if this is good for the league. I know we're all talking about it, but just bigger picture, I mean, Kevin Durant is on another team. Kyrie, Kemba, Kawhi, LeBron in the last year. They're all changing teams. Is this good for the league?
Well, rather than kind of label it as good or bad, I would just say, not to be too pragmatic, I mean, it's going to have a ripple effect beyond the obvious. You've seen the team changes and the shift in the power landscape that have come with it. But I had some really interesting conversations yesterday about the Board of Governors meeting in Vegas and what some of the owners had to say about, ways that they can tweak the rules to mitigate some of the impact on the teams. Because now the problem is, look at Damian Lillard. He signed his Supermax in Portland, and, and there's restrictions on how quickly they can trade him right now anyway. I forget the exact timing, but if he looked around tomorrow and was like, man, I didn't see this coming, Russ and James and Houston, LeBron and AD, with the Lakers, all the way down the line, Kawhi and Paul George with the Clippers, it's time for me to go. The second he opens his mouth and says to Neil O'Shea, their GM, you got to get me out, it's just like, the team is wrecked. And that's where I think in terms of the contracts and the length of them, it's something happened there. I heard yesterday that, you could possibly see a situation where rather than, the incumbent team only being able to offer an additional year, and more money, that you could start the money much higher on the front end, and have much, bigger annual raises on the front end, so that a couple of years in, the players, they've gotten their money, but the teams are protected on the back end if they end up wanting out. So these ideas are floating around, and there's always going to be an impact on kind of the market and how this stuff matters.
Also, since we all last talked, Kawhi's the writing of the contract came out, and it turns out to be a 3-year deal, but that third has an option. And are we doing this all again with him? What was the thought process from Kawhi's camp to have the deal the way they constructed it?
That was surprising. In fact, some of those same conversations yesterday, it was like, it's a little, I say this all the time, guys, like, as much as we try to dig and figure out exactly how deals go down, we can't be in the room. And with the Kawhi situation, there's some people that are like, wait a minute, like, the Clippers 100% know, that he was going to do a 2+1 when they agreed to give up the farm. And the idea that they could be losing this guy in 2 years, I don't know. That's pretty wild. The thinking from Kawhi's standpoint is, it does make sense. He's an 8-year player, and after 2 more years, he'll be at 10, and he'll be eligible for the Supermax. So, financially, it lines him up in that way, and he's already left a bunch of money on the table as it is with the different decisions that he's made. But still, if you're the Clippers, again, only they know, but you certainly would love to at least have 3 guaranteed years of this guy instead of 2.
Sam, kind of getting off the superstar standpoint from this free agency, we saw something yesterday that's kind of, I don't want to say it's becoming common, but we are seeing it more. Marcus Morris backed out on a deal with the Spurs to sign that 1-year deal with the Knicks. Kind of was wondering, what is the perspective on players that do that from a front office standpoint? Does going forward in the future, does this hurt someone like Marcus Morris's stock?
I'm going to say no. Maybe in kind of, certain individual scenarios or situations. Maybe there's a GM out there that shies away from him in the future. That is a good question, and I think it probably speaks to the fact that you got to wonder where this threshold is in terms of player empowerment, and like to the degree to what degree can they just, can they continue to call the shots? Because that one in a vacuum is certainly, one that the teams don't want to have to deal with. But I don't think that the market and the rest of the league and the other teams, are going to have any sort of, retribution down the road for him, because I just think the climate right now is very much like the talent is the talent. And these players have figured out that they got a lot of juice. And that one is certainly, you don't want to put a team in a bad spot like that. You got to find a way to not ever make a verbal agreement and then back out. But, I do kind of wonder if it was 15 years ago and Marcus Morris had a change of heart and a new opportunity in New York like he did in this situation, does he bite the bullet and stay in San Antonio? I mean, I think most likely, yes. I think right now it's just kind of, again, the mood of the moment is that you kind of look at it and these guys are saying, no, I think I want out. I want to do what I want to do, and that's what he did.
Sam, so when's the break for you? I mean, we're getting near the end of Summer League. You had the Board of Governors. I think most of the dominoes have fallen. Is August and, end of July and August kind of some chill time finally?
Yeah, it's coming up. We got a little vacation that we're very excited about in about a week. I was actually, as much as last night was a long night, I mean, Vegas just takes the life out of you. And then I get home and I'm ready to unwind, and we're having first family dinner in 5-6 days, and then this thing pops and it's like, oh man, all right, here we go. But we'll be heading over the pond. I got a sister who actually moved to England recently, so very excited. We're going to go see her and see that part of the world. So usually it's very late July, and then August is pretty slow. To be honest, it's a new rhythm for me at this job too, because at the Athletic, I'm going to sound like a commercial, like I so often do, but we try to keep the coverage going. And so, I'll be chiming in through August, but it's nice once you finally get off the road and in terms of today, when you get out of Dodge and don't have Vegas as part of your daily life anymore.
Yeah, well, you deserve that vacation, Sam. We encourage everybody to check out your work at The Athletic and everybody's work there. Thank you so much, and we will see you soon.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
All right, that's Sam Amick.
The Drive.